I like to chartreuse and white, and it really goes back to a confidence thing. I've had co-anglers where back in the days where I fished, a BFL or an open where co-anglers pull one out, and I'm like, man, that thing is ugly. And they're fishing behind me, and they're catching them, and before you know it, I'm asking them for one. Some days, they like dark colors. Some days they like bright colors. A couple of years ago, you couldn't find a red chatterbait. That was the big deal. But I haven't grown too fond of that one just yet. I still feel like if they'll bite the red one, they'll bite the green pumpkin one. But yeah, I don't get real deep into my thought process with colors. I either green pumpkin for the most part, or white and chartreuse. Like I said, if I go to Florida, I'm gonna throw black and blue. The way I like to set mine up, I told you a second ago, I like to do things a little different from, like Brett Height to me. He's one of the best chatterbaits anglers there are. Well, he throws this on a glass rod. You see him has that big old, looks like a big heavy rod, but it's a big glass rod and it's got a lot of sensitivity and he's got a lot of give. Well, me as an angler, I fish so fast, and I'm not necessarily talking about my retrieve, I'm talking about I'm constantly going down the bank. Well, if I'm constantly going down the bank and one hits it and is running this way, I like a 7'6" arc medium heavy rod. Guys are always like, man, that's a little bit heavy for a rod, for a chatterbait. I'm like, yeah, it is, but I'm always kind of constantly moving. And if that fish bites and it's coming at me, I like a little bit longer rod that's got a little bit more backbone. That way I can make sure a hook penetrates. And that's kind of one of the things I've learned over the years. And a lot of the reason why I started using 7.6, one year I was fishing the cypress lake while I'm going down the bank, and I'm skipping the chatterbait under each cypress tree, using a 7'3" rod, and those fish would eat it off that cypress tree and they would run straight to the boat. Well, I lost several that I never would get, my line catch up to them. Pretty obviously. If that fish is running to you, well, this 7'6" rod, I'm able to kind of bend to them and got a little bit more leeway, I guess you could say, to make sure that I get my hook penetrated. My reel, I use it just as more times than not. If I got a reel in my hands, it's a 6-3-1, unless I'm flipping. And that way I like a steady retrieve. You can kind of see this one's kind of been beat the heck and back. That way, a 6-3-1 is kind of that perfect speed. If you get to where you're throwing or making, you ain't got to make a long cast, but if you get to reeling your chatterbait too fast, it starts to roll over on you. So I like that 6-3-1. Even though I like to fish down the bank fast, I still got that same speed to where that bait's not rolling over a whole lot. And my line choice, pretty simple. I've used from 15-pound line, which I like up north in that clear water, to 20-pound line. I've had people say, well, 20-pound line's a lot. Well, I've learned from mistakes of mine on Lake Fork, just right down the road, that 17-pound fluoro ain't real big line to them big fish. I've had several big fish at Lake Fork a couple years ago wrap me up around some of the stumps and break me off on the chatterbait. So, I kind of lean toward that 17-pound line a lot. Once we kind of go up north, like I said, where that water is extremely clear, I'll kind of go down to 15, where they may not have all the trash to kind of get me wrapped up in, or something to cut my line. But that's kind of my general setup everywhere I go. Like I said, I'm kind of 7.6 medium heavy, 17-pound line more times than not, and a 6-3-1. And that's kind of, I usually have 2 or 3 rods set up that way in my rod box. Every now and then, if I'm skipping docks, I'll use a 7-3-1, just so I can make better skips, because sometimes it's kind of like a baseball pitcher. Some days he's throwing darts, some days his game's not awful. Some days I'm skipping pontoon boats and I'm hitting the pontoon every time I skip. So some days I'll use a 7-3-1 just so I'm a little bit more accurate on my skips. A 7-3, I like to skip a lot. I'm not as close to the water and slapping the water as close to the boat, as I would be, with a 7.3 rod. To 7.6, I'm more out there. So a little bit downsizing your rod makes you a little bit more accurate or makes me accurate anyway when I'm skipping the chatterbait. But yeah, any questions so far? Yes, sir.
Fluorocarbon versus braid with your chatterbaits.
Yes, sir. I use nothing but fluoro, and the main reason is because I heard the late Aaron Martin say one time he was using braid, and these clips that are on your bladed jigs, every time he had a good one on, it was straight. That braid would straighten that clamp out. So, if Aaron Martin said it, it's the truth. Go ahead.
Did you ever think about putting a connection knot, like putting fluorocarbon or whatever with the braid, like your main braid, but you put like a...
I haven't, and the main reason why, I am a very, very simple angler. I do not complicate stuff. There's already a lot of stuff out there that can go wrong, so I'm very simple. I'm very simple with my colors. You know, I heard Gerald Swindle say one time, you know, there's only about 3 different colors when it comes to soft plastics or baits, you know, so I keep everything as simple as I can. But yeah, color selection. I'm sure a lot of you guys are from this area or from South. I'm from Mississippi. We have a lot of muddy water. More times than not, back home I'm using white or white and chartreuse. Same thing from, you know, Red River all the way to Texas. If I'm not using white and chartreuse, my favorite color is green pumpkin, which is, you know, what I got both of these on. When I go up north, literally green pumpkin is the only color I use when I get in clear water. You know, it's one of them deals where I just, like I said, I try not to overthink a whole lot. You got so much going through your brain when you're fishing. You don't want to think about, well, does my skirt need a little bit of chartreuse in it? Does it need a little purple? I don't get real fancy like that. I keep it real generic. Green pumpkin, white chartreuse, kind of really depending on the watercolor. If I'm fishing somewhere and I'm throwing a white and chartreuse chatterbait and I can see my bait all the way back to the boat, you know, I'm probably going to swap to a little bit more natural color. So I'll kind of let the watercolor kind of determine what color I'm using. So that's kind of how I go about selecting it. A lot of times I'll just unhook my chatterbait and just drop it in the water and see how far down I can see my bait. Those are the 3 main colors I go with. Like I said, it all falls back to a confidence deal for me. You know, like this one here, it's actually got a lot of teeth marks on it. So, you know, you can tell it's been working, and that's what I know in the back of my head. I was like, this is my go-to bait, and I know these colors will work.